Okay, so hi everyone. It was a lot of fun last week, so I decided why not have another stream. And today it's kind of a different stream. It's not so much about sharing thoughts and building a specific demo app. Instead, there are a couple of things, a couple of libraries, which I want to explore or play around with myself because I haven't really worked with them, at least not a lot. Or actually, I haven't really worked with them. Especially BetterAuth is a brand new library, or relatively new. It's an amazing authentication library as it seems. And so I figured, why not bring you along and explore these things together with you. H3 and Nitro, by the way, are essentially Express.js alternatives, you could say. Node.js frameworks that, as it seems, do deliver amazing performance. And that's therefore what I want to explore over the next 1 or 2 hours together with you. And well, let's see how far we get there. As always, if you got any comments, questions, if you've worked with these things already, definitely let me know. As I mentioned, it's relatively new for me. I just lost my chat. Here it is. So, yeah, hi everyone. Nice to see you all here. Nice to be back in a second stream. As I mentioned on various channels, I do plan on having streams like this regularly. I don't know exactly with which frequency, every week, twice a week. I'll see, because obviously I also have a lot of other things to do. But yeah, let's try something like this today, exploring some new stuff. It's going great, High Priest. How are you? How are you all doing? Oh, sorry. How are you all doing? Yeah, let's jump right in, shall we? I'll start with H3, and just to make it clear what all these things are. H3 is essentially, as they're saying on their own GitHub repository, it is a minimal HTTP framework, which actually does not depend on Node.js, but instead you can run it in a lot of different environments. You can also run it on the edge. You can, as far as I know, run it in Cloudflare workers and stuff like that. And H3 is therefore a very lightweight library that you can use to build web servers with Node.js, though as I just said, it's actually not just Node.js, it's JavaScript in general. Nitrojs then is kind of by the same team. It's all by the Nuxt people, you could say. And actually Nuxt, the Vue.js meta framework, builds up on Nitro, and Nitro builds up on H3, because H3, as we will see, is very minimal, and Nitro is a bit more feature-rich, has more things built in. At least that is my knowledge here. We'll see if that is all correct. Yeah, I am also recording, by the way. So I will upload these VODs, these videos, in the next days. I created a new YouTube channel for that. YouTube, let me see, youtube.com at Maximilian Extended, I think, which currently is empty. And I created a new one because YouTube really doesn't like it if you have like super long VOD stuff in your regular channel, because these longer videos get less views, so the overall channel gets less views and future videos get a lower priority. So I created this new channel and I'll upload my live stream VODs there. So that's the plan. But now let's actually jump in. Let's explore these things, shall we? Because that's actually why I started this all and what I want to do here. I saw you mention BetterAuth last week, but for my React Native app, I was looking at using React Native Google Sign-In and React Native Apple Authentication. Have you used any of the two libraries I mentioned? So when it comes to React Native authentication, I will say, actually, Expo Auth. I will say that Expo has really great authentication docs, and indeed they do have their own authentication libraries, which you can use to easily add authentication into native apps. That being said, I think, and we can take a look at that, I think BetterAuth actually also can be used with Expo. Yes, they do have some guides on how to use BetterAuth with Expo, but I haven't used BetterAuth yet, so there's not too much I can say about it. Is it good to use Flutter in 2025? I actually will probably create a separate video on the React Native Flutter thing, but yeah, Flutter is an extremely widely used, popular tool for building mobile apps, and that's the same this year as it was last year. So of course, building mobile apps with Flutter, not a bad idea. Will this library work in Dino? BetterAuth, you mean? I think so, since, yeah, it should, I think, but I haven't tried it. So let's get started. So I want to explore H3 first, and for that, I'll actually create a new folder. Explore H3 sounds like a fitting name. And in there, I'll just create a simple TypeScript file, server.ts. And that's, by the way, the nice thing. You can use H3 to build a web server with TypeScript relatively easily, as it seems. I briefly glimpsed at the docs, and it looked rather simple there. So let me open this project in VS Code. Yeah, I will not update now. And I will switch my profile to stream. Okay. So there's the server.ts file. And if we now, let me move that over here. If we now take a look at the official documentation, the H3 documentation for getting started here, it seems as if we could simply create a file like this, app.ts or server.ts in my case, and then run it with help of another third-party package, which also is by the Nux team, to preview it. Now, I do think, however, if I just copy this here into my server.ts file, I will probably get some errors here because, of course, TypeScript is not aware of this package. So what I will do here, and as I said, I haven't used it before, so we'll see how that works out. I'll initialize this project with npm init, and then install H3 as a dependency. Now, as I said, you can also use it without Node.js and other environments, but here I want to use it with Node.js. And with that installed, this error goes away because that H3 package, which I just installed, of course, makes all these things and the types that belong to it available. And of course, I'll not just copy and paste the code, I'll also take a look at what it actually does and we'll change it, but I just want to see something on the screen to explore how that all works. So now that we got this, we can try to run this with this command here. npx in the end uses npm and just allows us to run commands without or use libraries without installing them explicitly. And we are going to use this listen or listen package here to run this app.ts or server.ts file in my case. And the nice thing here is that we actually don't have to compile the TypeScript code as it seems. Instead, this package seems to do that. So that's rather nice. So I'll copy that. And of course, here for me, it's server.ts, and give this a try. And actually, it opened a new browser tab for me on a different screen where I can see this JSON response content, which came back from localhost 3000, which seems to be the default port it runs this server on. So that is now a Node web server with or not a Node server, I should say. It's a H3 web server using JavaScript that we can also adjust to work with just Node, or as we're doing it here, which we can run with this library. Now I'll explore all that code and so on, but first let me see if there are any questions. Yeah, by the way, Jackson Bayer, I also like sharing my thought process and my work life. I do enjoy those live streams quite a lot because, yeah, I do explore these things either way, and why not take you with me and explore it together? Any plan for a stream totally about Flutter in the future? Maybe. There are so many things I could stream about, so why not Flutter? Why TypeScript? Well, why not? You could also use it without TypeScript, of course. At least that's my understanding. Why wouldn't you? But here I will use it with TypeScript. Okay, so what do we have here? I'm importing from that H3 library. We are creating an app, so that's very similar to what we do with Express.js, for example. There we also call this Express thing to create an app. Then we create a router here, and we register it like middleware in Express.js with the use method. So that's very similar. If you've worked with Express.js, that should look similar. It does for me. And then we register a new get route for /nothing, so our domain /nothing, and then we have an event handler defined with this define event handler function, as it seems, where we define the actual code, the actual function that will be triggered when a request reaches this route. And it looks like this event handler gets an event object, which is probably the request. So let's see, if I log event, let's see what's in there. If I refresh this page here. Okay, so yeah, that looks like a request object. It's called event. In there, we actually have a node key, which holds a Node.js incoming message object, which is the default object Node.js uses for incoming requests. So you can get that Node.js-like experience, as it seems, if you want to. You can also access the Node response object there if you wanted to. We have a context object here, as it seems. We can probably use that to share data across middleware or stuff like that. And then a method or some meta properties, you could say, storing the method, the headers, and so on. Okay, so that makes sense. Now, let me go back to the docs here. That, of course, was just a quick start. And they're explaining it here too, but I would assume that my explanation was correct here. What is beautiful in H3 is that all you have to do to make a response is to simply return it. Responses can be a simple string, JSON objects, data buffer streams, and standard web responses. So I wonder what happens if I do return a string here instead of an object. What happens if I return HTML here, like a simple H1 tag? Let's see. Oh, okay, so that gets rendered as HTML, right? So it looks like it adjusts it automatically creates a response object where it sets the content type according or based on the data you're returning. So if you're returning an object, as it seems, it automatically returns it as JSON. It encodes it as JSON, you could say. If you return a string, it seems to treat that as HTML. What if I don't have tags in there? I would assume it's also treated as HTML. Yeah, so that's also an HTML document we got back here. We can also, by the way, see that, of course, if we take a look at the network tab and reload. Here's the request, and here we can see in the response headers, the content type is set to text HTML. And if I go back to returning an object here, on the other hand, and I reload, then here in my response headers, the content type is application JSON. So that's pretty convenient. Unlike in Express, we don't have to tell the framework what the response data is. Does H3 have a template engine? I don't know, but I would not assume that it has one because its whole idea is to be very lightweight. However, Nitro.js builds up on H3, and I haven't explored that, but we might have a template engine there. I'll take a look later. By the way, I will not drag this out forever. Obviously, you could spend hours just exploring something like this. I just want to explore the basic features together with you, and then we'll move on to Nitro.js and then also to Betteroff, of course. Okay, but this is how it seems to work. Now, I would assume that I can also somehow set response headers, but how does that work? How can I? Okay, so that was the quick start guide. Now we can learn more about the app instance. So about this thing here, where we called use. The core of H3 server is an app instance. It is the core of the server that handles incoming requests. You can use app instance to register event handlers. So I guess here we registered the router event handler, or the router middleware, which then registers event handlers. Setting global options, create an app with verbose logging enabled. So I can pass an options object here. Oh, we got a couple of hooks here. So it looks like we could register functions, event handlers here that would run after every response that we send, on every error that we get, on every request that we get. We have some WebSocket stuff going on here. Let's set this to true. What happens now if I send a request? I'm not sure. Not sure if anything changed there. Well, doesn't matter. So, setting global hooks. When initializing an H3 app, you can register global hooks, what I just said, on error, so that you could set up general error handling, and for example, I guess, yeah, write some log files, disconnect some database, or anything like that. Okay, registering event handlers. You can register event handlers with the app use method. So that is, of course, what we're doing here with the router. And the router just seems to be like a wrapper around this routing functionality. But we could also directly register an event handler. Interesting. So we could listen to any requests to hello, ignoring the HTTP method as it seems, and directly register an event handler. So we could also, maybe up here, app use, what was the syntax? Okay, app use and then the path like test. And then here define an event handler like this. And okay, that's a weird completion with the dot missing. Okay, and then we could here return h1 test or something like this. So I guess with that added now, I can still visit like the root page, but if I visit /test, I get this. But if I would send a post request to /test, I would also get this, I assume. And I can test this, test post, with help of the, I think, I have some extension that allows me to send HTTP requests from directly inside the Visual Studio Code. I think it's the REST client extension. With that, I can add HTTP files and then define my request in there, like so. And that allows me to send requests from in here without using Postman or anything like this. Yeah, so here I also get back this HTML page. Okay, interesting. So that's how that works. Yeah, I'm also wondering, X Cervantes X, how would you set the HTTP status code? That is exactly what I'm also looking for. Let's see. I don't know yet. Maybe through that event object. Let's see. Do we have like any method in here? Respond with to JSON. Well, I can access the node response and then probably there set headers and also like set a status maybe, but I'm not sure if that's the way to go. If all handlers get called and no responses, yeah, okay, so if there are no handlers, we get a 404. Event handler options, maybe here, well, it doesn't make sense, but okay, we could pass options to event handlers. What can we set there? Here, I guess. Handler, lazy, match, and route. Okay, not sure what these things do. It's explained here. You can define a custom matcher function to have more advanced logic for matching requests. Okay, so here we could filter requests so that we in general handle all requests here, but then we have like a filter, I guess. Yeah. But we should not use that for routing, but instead use the built-in router. Got it. lazy. You can provide an async function that H3 will load on first time request matching the route is received. It's useful for dynamic imports to reduce startup time. Oh, okay. So we could basically speed up H3 or the entire web server, I guess, by loading some code only when it's needed, so that the server loads even faster because it doesn't need to load all that time all that code in advance. Okay, but that's still no status code. Let's see the event handler. After defining event handlers, we got that. Yeah, we can return. Oh, we can also define an event handler as an object instead of a function. And if we do so, we can register some extra hooks. So I assume that you could add extra functions here to these arrays, extra handler functions probably, that also run for every incoming request and before every response you send back. So we can give this a try, I guess. So maybe here, let's pass such an object. And then for the handler, I wanna actually like grab this code here, I guess. And then on request, I can define an array. And in here, we have more functions, I guess, where we get events. Yeah, and then console log on request. So we could do additional stuff here if we needed to. So now if I send a request to this page, I should remove that other log. But yeah, then I see on request here, so that's coming from there. Okay, so we can do stuff like that. Interesting, but still no status code. Response types. So that's what we saw before. If we return an object, it automatically gets converted to JSON. Strings are sent as text HTML. That's good. Yeah, that's all good. Error handling. We can throw objects created with create error to send back an error response. So I guess we could do something like this and check if math random is greater than .5. So in 50% of all cases, we throw the object created with create error. So create error is imported here. And then it takes an object. Here we can set a status code to something and probably a message. And now if I try reloading here, I sometimes get an error. Good, but still, how can I set the status code of a regular response? What is H3? It's basically a lightweight, a very minimal HTTP server you can build with JavaScript that can be used with Node.js, but also in other JavaScript environments like Cloudflare workers. It's essentially a highly performant JavaScript-based web server, an alternative to Express.js and kind of Node.js. Though you can also use it with Node.js, then it's just an alternative to Express.js, and it's probably quicker than Express.js from what I've heard. Okay, so that's all interesting. I'm really middleware. I'm really interested in learning how we can configure the response in greater detail. Middleware pattern is not recommended. So it's not recommended to add multiple middlewares. Instead, use H3 composables and object syntax hooks. Okay, so I guess the object syntax hooks, that's this stuff here, where we can control which other logic might run in addition to this handler, because this is an array, so we could define multiple other handlers that will run before this handler runs. That makes sense. But what are composables? Let's see. Maybe we'll learn that later. So the event object, that's this object we receive, and there. Okay, so we can import other functions from H3, like getQuery or readBody, And I think that is what composables means, because it's important to understand, and I said this at the beginning, but not everybody was there, I guess. So it's important to understand that H3 is made by the same people, or parts of the same people, some of the same people that also built Nuxt, which is that Vue meta framework. And in Vue, you have this idea of composables. So it's essentially the same as React hooks, you could say. The idea is that you can build Vue components, for example, and add extra functionality by bringing in those composables, those callable functions in the end. And here, it seems to be the same idea for those event handlers. You can import getQuery, for example, from H3 and pass this event object, which is in the end that object that contains the incoming request, to getQuery to extract the query params. You can extract the body by calling read body. So, for example, here, I guess for this get route, or let's say I add another route here, router post, to register a post route, to /data, whatever, doesn't matter. And I define an event handler here, and I expect to get some data here, which I want to extract from the incoming request body. So I can then use read body, if I understand this correctly, and pass the event object to it. And read body is imported from H3 here. And I can then get back that body data, and I guess it extracts it, it detects which kind of body it is, if it's JSON or form data and so on. I think it detects this automatically. So I need to await this. Yeah, okay. So let's see. I got my parsed data here where I await this. And for that, of course, I must make this handler async. And then I can console log my parsed data and then return, let's say, a JSON response, data received. And now I can reuse this function here, send a post request to /data. And set the content type to application JSON on that request, which I sent to my server here. And I attach this dummy data, why not? And if I send this, I get back message data received. And I also see that data, it's a bit hard to see, but it's logged here. So parsing that data also works. And I guess that's the idea with composables. And I would assume they have similar functions here for setting response status codes and stuff like that. So let's see. I can also access the native Node.js request and response if I wanted to. Okay. Can extract the method, the headers of the incoming request. Alternatively, I could use the get headers or the get header composable functions. Okay, yeah. So that all makes sense. Here we can learn more about the router. What do we learn here? Utils. Maybe that's where we can learn more about the composables. Yeah, these are the functions I can call on the event object to receive or to extract data from the incoming request. Things like the headers, the URL, the data with read body. It will also parse form data, essentially. That's good. And for the response, it's really weird that I got no navigation options here to go to the different utils. I just got utils, and oh God, it's here. Okay, so response. Okay, so that's where we can configure the response. We can append headers, and we can probably also, we can get the response status, and we can set the response status. And we pass the event object to it. Okay, so now that all makes sense. Now let's say we want to, in that data post route here, let's say I want to set a status code of 201. I can then call set response status, pass the event to it, pass my status code to it, and that's it. That will manipulate the response that will be sent, and I will then have a regular response I sent back with that status code, presumably. So now if I send that request again, I get back a 201 response. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Late to the party, anyone have one sentence overview of what H3 is? It's a very minimal, lightweight JavaScript web server library, which you can use as an alternative to Express.js. And it is much faster than Express.js, and you can also use it in other environments, not just with Node.js. You can use it in other JavaScript environments as well, for example, Cloudflare workers. That's my understanding. I'm playing around with it the first time today too, but that's what I understood from it. Marvin D. Hi, Mr. Max. If I buy the second edition paperback of React Key Concept on Amazon, will I get a free ebook copy of it? My understanding is that you do, yes. When you buy my React book, in the preface, so at the beginning of the book, there is a page with a QR code. You can scan it, fill out some form you are redirected to, attach some proof of your purchase, like the receipt, the invoice you got, and then you should get access to the bonus materials, which to my understanding also includes the ebook. Yeah, thank you for being part of the stream, Scumble. Amazing to have you and all the others here. And yeah, let's explore H3 and then Nitro and then also Betteroff. Though I will say, when it comes to H3, I'm almost done with the basic exploration. As I said, you could spend hours playing around with something like this, but I don't want to do that. I'm not sure if it's that interesting to you. So I just wanted to get like a general overview of what it is and how it works. And I think I have that now. You create an app with Create App. You can register your event handlers, which is in the end like your route handlers, your middleware, you could say. You can also use the router utility package. I still want to explore that. And then you can register your routes, define what should happen for incoming requests, add some extra hooks that run in addition to your main handler, before the main handler, as I understand it. You can return error responses, you can return other responses which are analyzed and parsed by that package, and depending on what you return as a response, it will automatically return it as a JSON response or as a HTML response, for example, which is pretty neat. So I can see this package being very lightweight, and it has all the base functionalities you would want to have here. Now, I'm not sure if you can use Express.js middleware with it, though I think you can probably, because wasn't there was some page, I think, where they said how you can convert this entire app you build with H3 to an app that also works in Node.js. I'm not sure where it was, but I think I saw something like this. Let's say from Express.js to H3. So they even have a guide where they basically tell you how you could migrate your Express app. Or is it just for learning H3 if you know Express? I think it's the latter. No, you can use middleware that you're using with Express, like Morgan. You can use that. And there is a helper function from Node middleware. Okay, so you can easily use your Express middleware in an H3 app too. Will probably cost you some performance, but that is possible. Interesting. Okay, there also are adapters because, as I said, you can use it in different environments, and you can use it with Node.js or in other environments that support JavaScript, like, as I said, Cloudflare workers. So yeah, that's the interesting part here. Thus far, I'm running this server with help of this listen package, this library. Now, what if I wanted to run this in a Node.js environment? If I wanted to do that, I would probably have to convert it, kind of, to a Node.js compatible app by using this two-node listener thing here. Okay, so I can set up a Node.js web server that uses H3 by using the create server function from Node, from its HTTP package, then wrap the app I created with H3 with 2-node listener, pass this to it, and then this should all work. So if I give this a try here, if I import node HTTP, create server, that's not working because I'm missing the types. So let's install the Node.js types because I'm using TypeScript here. So now create server is available, right? Yeah. So now here I can spin up my server with create server, but this app object passed to it doesn't work like this because it is a H3 app object, not something Node.js knows. That's why I have to convert it by using 2-node listener and passing app to that. And 2-node listener is a function I'm pulling in from H3. So now I should be able to run this file, or actually compile it first, I guess, because it's TypeScript, but then run it with Node.js. So if I do quickly compile it here, I get an error. Okay, because the basic, it's using some features which don't work in the JavaScript version TypeScript targets by default. So I actually have to create a tsconfig.json file here. And now it would be nice to get some help by GitHub Copilot. Come on, GitHub Copilot, give me that. Okay, give me a basic modern Node.js TypeScript config. Because writing TypeScript configs is really not a lot of fun. So let's see. Target ES 2020, I guess that should work. Module, I think here we want, get rid of the extra curly braces. I think here we want Node next, if I'm not mistaken, to use the native Node.js ES modules feature. Root dir is actually my root project directory in this case, but we can move that all to this. That's fine. Include source, we don't need that. I think that should probably work. So now if I can actually now also install TypeScript here as a development dependency to have a version restricted to this. I should not edit this file whilst installing. To have a version that belongs to this project here. So now if I add a compile script here and I run tsc, let's see. If I run npm run compile using this TypeScript version, now it compiles without errors. In the dist folder, I got that server.js file, and I should now be able to run this with Node, I guess. Well, not sure. Let's see if I visit localhost 3000. Yeah, that error is not a real error. Instead, I'm getting this because in my code, in that route I targeted, I have some logic that in 50% of all cases I throw an error because I was testing that. So that works. Okay. What's the main difference between H3 and Express? H3 has a better performance as far as I know, and it's way more minimal. How do you know that one library is more performant than the other? Simply because I read it. It's the main pitch of H3 that they have a great performance. I guess you can Google stuff like, H3 versus Express performance, and you should find some official benchmarks. But I'm not going to go through that here. That is basically their main pitch. Okay. What we can not do with H3? Well, I guess technically you can do the same things you do with Express. If you want to use some Express.js middleware with H3, you'll just need to use that extra function I showed before. Pravin, hey Max, greeting from India. I'm following your courses since 2020. Learned a lot from your courses, especially JavaScript and React. Now working at Oracle as a full stack dev. That's amazing. By the way, it's always amazing. It really always is super amazing for me to hear and see where people are working now. Also, thanks to my content, it means so much to me because it's, well, normally I create those courses and I don't really see the impact necessarily. And hearing from people that they were able to get a job or were able to like start a business or so on, also because of my courses. That is amazing. So thank you so much for the amazing feedback. Okay, so that is H3. This is how we can use it to build a basic web server. Now, it's not the only thing I wanted to explore today, so that's why I'll stop this now and instead take a look at Nitro. And this is now where things maybe get confusing, because Nitro is also a very performant JavaScript web server. It's by the same people, at least to some extent, as H3, but it's a bit less minimal. It builds up on H3. So I guess if you wanna build a web app that's highly performant, and as far as I know, as I heard, more performant than Express, but you want a bit more stuff baked in, you want to have a bit more utilities baked in, then you might want to use Nitro instead of H3. And by the way, Next, so that Vue meta framework, is using Nitro under the hood. So they created Nitro to build Next to have a great performance there. But you can also use Nitro without Next to just run a web server. How about global error handling middleware in H3? Well, as I understand it, you can register any middleware you want with app use, define your event handler, and then okay, what you mean is probably here for create app that you have this on error function, which allows you to listen to any errors that might occur anywhere in your application and then do something based on that, as I understand it. But I would have to explore the docs if there is a better way of handling errors. It's just a first glimpse I'm taking here. So back to Nitro. That's the idea about Nitro. Mr. Shepard Ali, hi Max, many thanks to you. I learned too much from your courses, and next Monday my first software developer job starts. That's amazing. All the best for your new job. Super happy that my content could help. Okay, so Nitro builds up on H3, still super performant, but more features built in. That's my understanding. Nitro is an open source framework to build web servers using H3 and lots of built-in features. Nitro automatically makes your code compatible with any deployment provider and runtime. So I guess it detects where it's running and magically makes sure that the code does run there. Okay. We could use the online playground, but I will create a local environment instead. Yeah, we need Node.js here now, of course. So we, not of course, but here it seems like we are creating a Node.js app, at least in this quick start here. So let's run this command here using the Gidget tool. What's that? Okay, it's also by the same people. It's a tool for downloading templates and setting up projects in the end. Okay, so we can use this tool here to create a new Nitro app. So that's what I'll do. Let's run this command. Okay. So now that's all set up. Code Nitro app. Let's open that in VS Code. Not going to update here. Okay. I can now also close this VS Code instance here, and that's the Nitro one. So let's see what we have in there. We have TypeScript, extending some base TypeScript config file. Got the server folder, and in there we got a routes folder with one index.ts file. So looks like we have file-based routing, which I personally am not the biggest fan of, to be very honest. I know a lot of people like it. Personally, not the biggest fan, but okay, it is what it is. So it looks like this is how we set up an index, like a root route, having an index.ts file in the routes folder, and in there we export an event handler, just as we did essentially in H3. There we also defined event handlers. We get an event object and we return text here, which I guess is also then interpreted as HTML, or which also tells Nitro and under the hood H3, which is getting used by Nitro, to send back an HTML response. Let's give this a try. Let's run the dev command here to spin up that development server. Do you want to auto update a config file? Okay, yeah. Let's see. Localhost 3000. Let me move that over here. Let's reload. Okay, got back some HTML page. That's how that works. Okay, so let's go back to nitro.build/guide. Directory structure. The starter template. The starter template has some important files to get you started. It has a routes folder, which contains our application handlers. You can create subdirectories inside routes to create nested handlers. Okay, so we could create something like a hello folder, I guess, and in there an index.ts file. So index.ts in hello, and then in there we export as a default, yes, define event handler, which is globally available due to this project setup. And we pass this event handler function to it. And then here we can return hello world. And that would then allow us to go to localhost 3000 hello, if I understand this correctly, and see that. Okay. So we can have nested routes for nested folders for nested routes. We can also add an API folder next to routes, which works in the same way, but they will have an API prefix. So I guess we could also essentially add like an API folder in routes for that. But sure, we can also add one next to routes if we want to. Okay. Utils contains your application utilities with auto import support. So, okay, we can define some utility functions in there, and the project will automatically make all the functions we export available in other files so that we don't even need import statements there, I guess. Just as we don't need an import statement for define event handler here. Some convenience. Can also sometimes make things a bit harder to reason about, but yeah, okay. Plugins for custom plugins, config files, okay. Got it. Server utilities. You might notice that there are no imports. It auto imports, yeah, as I just said. We have all the H3 utilities available, so like read body and so on, which we saw in the H3 part, so that we can parse the incoming request body. I wonder, how do I create a route that should only handle post requests though? Is that answered here? No, probably in the routing guide. Let's see, server routes. Because currently I'm handling GET requests here. But what if I want to handle POST requests? Let's see, if I try sending a POST request here with the nice extension I have, if I want to send like a POST request to /hello again with some data, I also get back hello world. So currently these routes handle all HTTP verbs as it seems. What about patch? Yeah, so they handle all HTTP methods. What if I want to restrict that though? Oh, okay, we can add like the methods to the file names. So I could say index.getTS in the hello folder. And now if I try to, why is this opening this file and it's showing me the error? Let's see if that is a problem. If I now try to send this request, method patch is not allowed. If I send a GET request, that works. Okay, so that is how we can restrict this. And we also don't have to put an index.ts file in subfolders. Instead, I could also just have like a hello.getTS file here. It's really weird that it opens this file all the time and I have to save it, but okay. So if I now send this request, it works the same way as before. Okay. So that's how we can handle different methods. You can nest routes by creating subdirectories. We saw that. First, create a file in the... Yeah, okay, these are the simple routes we already have. Routes with params. Okay, so that's, as we know it from Next.js, for example, you can have square brackets in your file name here to define that you want to have like a request parameter in there, a URL parameter, you could say, so that you have a dynamic route. And by the way, that is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of file-based routing, because you end up with all those weird file names, and at least in Next.js, they can get even weirder than that, and it's just not my aesthetics. But of course, yeah, that's just personal preference. So if I try to like have like a posts folder here, and then maybe have an id.get.ts file, and I export my default define event handler function here, I guess we can return a response, but we should also be able to like parse the incoming request parameters with get router param. So get router param event param. Okay, I need to define which param I want to get. Makes sense, like ID in my case here. So I get the ID, and then I could, for example, return the ID here just to test whether that works. So now if I send a GET request to /posts/anything, that should trigger this route, and that anything part should be that ID then. So if I send this to /post/ABC, I get back an ID of ABC here. And if I type in ABC123, I get that as an ID. That makes sense. So that's how we can set up dynamic routes here. Okay. We can also have multiple params. We need to separate them with slashes then. Catch all params with 3 dots. And I'm not trying this all in code here, really, because I just want to get an overview of Nitro. I'm not aiming to build something with it here. Might do that in a future stream or something like this. Here I really just want to get an overview of the features that are built in. And I'm essentially taking you with me, showing you how I typically tackle something like this. Also because I often get the question how I learn new stuff. Of course, you learn it best by really building something with it, but if I want to get a first overview, I typically go through the docs, explore things, write some code, play around with some things that are maybe not immediately clear to me, and yeah, that's how it works. Okay. Specific request method. You can append the HTTP method to the file name. Yeah, we already saw that we can restrict which request which HTTP method will trigger a route handler. Environment specific handlers. You can specify for a route that it will only be included in specific builds by adding .dev.prod. Oh, okay, so you could make sure that certain routes are only available during development and things. Okay. You can add middleware, but I guess since they're pointing to the H3 docs here, and they are saying that you should not use middleware. Middleware is not recommended. It's also not recommended here, I guess. Instead, you should probably also use this object syntax event handler. So the special hooks you can add to event handlers, or use this composable approach that you call functions in event handlers where you want to have middleware. Though, if you wanted global middleware, and they're not saying that it's not recommended here, to be honest. So if you wanted global middleware, you would probably go with that middleware folder here and add your files in there. So I guess what you would do is next to routes in that server folder, you would add a middleware folder and have like an auth.ts file to enforce authentication. And then there you also export that event handler, get your event object, and then console log, in this case here, auth middleware, And do I need to do something to make sure that the request can continue? Let's see if I reload here. Looks like that worked. But I get no log here. So how? Yeah, I got no log. So how do I make sure that this middleware gets called? Middleware are auto-registered within the middleware directory. Yeah, they're exporting the define event handler. And we should not return in there. I'm not doing that, right? No. Okay, so let's try restarting the server. Maybe that helps. Restarting the server. Reloading here. Okay, now it's getting locked. So it did kind of work. It just needed that server restart. Okay, so that's how you can add middleware. And that middleware will get applied to all routes. If you want route-specific middleware, you should use this object syntax event handler, which means that in the hello, for example, you can, instead of passing a function to define event handler, you can pass an object to it, and that object has a handler property which holds that function. And then there you can add these special hooks like on request, which allows you to register an array of additional functions that should also be executed before the main handler function runs. So that would be hello specific middleware, if I understand this correctly. So now we could send this request here to hello, see that output which we expect, but also trigger that hello specific middleware here. Hi ZapDev. Hi Max, greetings from Mexico. I'm a big fan of your courses. And sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. I'm a big fan of your courses. Sorry if this has been asked before, but do you plan to upload the streams to YouTube? Yes, I will. I will upload those streams to YouTube. I will upload them to this Maximilian extended YouTube channel, which I created, which is currently empty. Because basically on YouTube, you get kind of punished if you put these super long videos, which don't get a lot of views in your main channel. That's why I have the extra channel. And I will upload all the streams I do onto that channel over the next few days. So typically like 1 or 2 days after the stream. That's my goal. Okay, so that's middleware. That's how we can handle requests. We can also use middleware to filter requests by, for example, taking a look at the URL. Yeah, of course. And then we could have some logic that only runs if that URL matches a certain path. Error handling. You can basically throw those error objects as you could in H3, as I understand it. You can therefore handle errors. Yeah, it would be interesting to see an example here for most routes. If the route starts with API, the default will change to application JSON. Okay, well, let's see what else we get here. Nitro allows you to add logic at the top level for each route of your configuration. It can be used for redirecting, proxying, caching, and adding headers to a route. So how does this work? You can set route rules in Nitro config. Okay, so in our project, we have this Nitro config file, and in there we could set up route rules and, for example, say that all the routes that start with /blog have certain cache settings, so certain cache headers attached to them, which is of course more convenient than doing this on a per route level, which makes sense. Okay, so that makes sense. Now back to the server utilities. We got the auto import going on. We can add our utils directory where we can define our own functions, which are then automatically made available so that we don't have to import them. So if I add a utils folder here and I have like a square TS file, and in there I export a function square and I expect to get a number. Let's name it num here. Then I can return this. And now I should be able to use that in other files like hello, for example, doesn't matter. I can call square. No, it is adding an import here. It's not too bad, but I think that should not happen. Do I need to name it use something? you can add your application utilities and it will be auto-imported. Every export in the utils directory and its subdirectories will become available globally in your application. So, does not look like that's the case here. What if I rename it? Use Square? Or maybe it imported it, but actually I didn't have to do that. Cannot find. I mean, it's not super important to me, but it's weird that they say it should work without importing. Because I essentially have that same example almost as they do. It's also not too important, to be honest. I can live with having that import here. I assume things do still work. Yeah. I cannot find any channel Maximilian Schwarzmüller extended. Well, it is that YouTube channel does exist. Should be publicly available, if I'm not mistaken. So it should be youtube.com/Maximilian Extended. It has 2 subscribers, so I guess you should be able to find it. But I'll also check after the recording. Let's see, what else have we here? Oh yeah, I'm stupid. I can also just like post the link here, of course. Yeah. Are you doing live streams on a specific day or just randomly? Right now it's randomly. There might be like more structure in the future. I'm not 100% sure yet. Basically, I don't want to like commit to a schedule which I can't keep because I'm doing a lot of other stuff too. But I do enjoy having live streams, so it will probably become a more regular thing, maybe with a fixed schedule, kind of, in the future. But then again, I definitely won't be able to like have a stream every Thursday, but we'll see how that plays out. But I do want to have regular streams, I can say that. Okay, so back to Nitro, though I will also wrap this up soon because, of course, there still is better auth, and I'm really excited to explore that in greater detail. And I think, like, I got the gist of Nitro. We can set up a server here. We have, like, the file-based routing. We have the utilities, which should be auto-imported, even though that doesn't work for me. We have a relatively easy way of registering middleware. And the next step for me to, like, really, like, dive deeper and also explore some potential problems I might be facing with it would be to build a demo app, which I typically do. If I want to learn something, I start as I did here. I read the docs, I play around with some basic code, but then I also build like a demo app at some point. Might do that in the future, maybe also on stream, but I won't do it right now because I also want to get into better auth, and today I don't want to stream like for 4 hours because I got some other stuff to do there after. However, before I wrap up this Nitro part here, I want to explore that some other parts it offers, essentially. So it has several built-in utilities. Use storage, okay. Async context, okay, that's stuff I would have to explore in greater detail. And I can't click on that stuff here. Interesting. Check the source code. Okay. Well, let's ignore that. They do have some built-in utility functions, and we can use these H3 functions for, which I did cover in the H3 part, for parsing request bodies and so on. They also, and that's interesting, have built-in WebSocket support. Also not something I'll explore in great detail now, but super interesting that it looks like it's really simple, even though it's experimental right now, but super simple to enable WebSockets here and send messages to any connected listeners, receive messages. That is really interesting. Of course, you can also like have WebSockets with Node Express. You just need some extra packages and so on. Here it's built in, and that's really interesting. So that would also be fun to play around with. Also, server sent events, which I probably will create a video about because that's the thing like nobody knows. It's actually a great alternative to WebSockets in many situations. So nice to have that built in here too. Hello Max, first stream you made was fantastic. Good luck for this one. Thank you so much, Even Star. I hope you like it. Great to have you all back here. When there are new releases, such as those videos in Code Curiosity podcast, will you be live streaming them? I'm not sure which new releases do you mean, Jimmy Rosie? KV storage, Nitro provides a built-in storage layer that can abstract file system or database or any other data source. Oh, interesting. So we can use this utility function to easily store and retrieve data to and from memory, or I guess also from other data sources, like databases. Yeah, you can. Oh, that's interesting. You can register storage drivers like a database, like the file system, and then a file you want to store stuff in, or other drivers like Redis, and then easily interact with that storage from inside your code. So that's pretty convenient for storing and retrieving information, for simplifying that process. I wonder if they have like SQLite support. They probably do, since they have like the SQL database part here. So let's see, SQL database. The default database connection is pre-configured with SQLite. That's amazing, because SQLite is amazing and works out of the box for development mode and Node.js compatible production deployments. Okay, so you can easily interact with databases too without bringing in extra packages. So that's essentially the idea here as I see it. Like you have H3, that very minimal, lightweight HTTP server thing, and then you have like Nitro adding way more features to it whilst still having great performance, as they say, and as some benchmarks confirm as far as I can tell, so that you have a great experience building Node.js web servers here by using Nitro instead of Express, for example. Though I will say, because not a lot of people know it, Node.js also has experimental SQLite support built in. So you can, it's actually stable. No, it's active development. So you can actually also use SQLite in a Node application without extra dependencies if you want to. Though it might change since it's under active development. But it's nice to have that all here in this package as well. Jimmy Rosie, example React. Oh, you mean if a new React version is released? Well, having a live stream about something like that would definitely also be interesting. I'm not sure if I always have like time when those things are released, because they might be released at the strangest of days or when I have other things to do, but definitely interesting to stream about releases of new major library versions too. Great idea. Evenstar, I am wondering about two questions as front-end developer who have mainly focused on web only for years and decided to explore on mobile development. Do you have plan for making stream about mobile development? And I wonder about, is that your Flutter course up to date and good way to begin to mobile world? So streaming mobile app development, why not? I mean, there is so much I could stream, so many technologies. It will not be possible to stream everything, but I would love to cover as much as possible for sure, and I'm pretty confident that there also will some mobile app development included. And regarding the Flutter course, yeah, this course still teaches you Flutter the way you should use it today. So that's a great course for learning how to work with Flutter. Okay, so yeah, I said that I want to wrap up the Nitro part, and still here I am talking about it. But okay, so we got built-in database support, WebSocket support, routing. We can configure caching for route handlers with that configuration object we can pass to define cached event handler. Okay, so we cannot just define event handlers with define event handler, we can also use define cached event handler. And if we do that, it looks like we can't have on request here. Okay, so then it looks like we need this other approach where we pass the event handler function to it, but then we can have a configuration object as a second argument, and there we can define the caching for this event handler. Okay. So if you want to have greater control over how the resource returned by that event handler is cached, you can use define cached event handler. You can also have cached functions where the data returned here will be cached during development, right? Or not just development, as it seems. Okay, so interesting caching stuff here. We'd have to explore that in greater detail. Fetch Nitro provides built-in fetch API. Okay, so if you want to send a request from your web server to some other web server, you can use Nitro's fetch function, which I assume is somehow better than the one built into Node.js, probably faster. It's built on top of this ofetch library. Okay. You can also make internal requests to other handler functions, and then there actually is no request being sent. It's directly called instead. Interesting. Assets. You can have a public directory, which is automatically served statically. That's convenient. You can extract files, return data from those files. Okay, lots of interesting stuff. Tasks. Okay, so I'll have to explore that in greater detail some other time, because now I actually also want to explore better auth.